This is the time of year that we all think about traveling. Where are we going to go in the coming year? And for some reason, 2020 has a special ring to it that I want to make it a really epic year. So what I thought I would do is put together some inspiration for you. I've listed what I consider to be the top 25 travel podcasts for 2020. And these are in alphabetical order, which, aren't I clever again? Active Travel Adventures happens to be number 1 because it starts with an A. So hopefully since you listen to this, you agree that this is a great travel podcast to give you inspiration and encouragement for you to get out there and stretch your courage muscles and build a little grit and get outside of your comfort zone to see our wonderful planet and the great outdoors by biking, hiking, paddling. It's just a wonderful way to explore our planet. So I hope that you continue to listen to Active Travel Adventures and consider that one of your top travel podcasts. Number 2 on the list is the Amateur Traveler Podcast. This is a podcast about specific destinations. In fact, I'll put a link to when I was interviewed about my own home area, the Crystal Coast of North Carolina, to give you an idea of what this podcast is all about. Chris Christensen, the host, will interview somebody about a destination and gives you a feel of what kind of itinerary you should do if you want to explore that town. Up next is America's National Parks. This is a great way to get the backstory and the history of some of the more than 400 units that are managed by the National Park Service. It's got some great storytelling and gives you a little bit of inspiration and encouragement to see some of our beautiful national parks here in the U.S. After that, number 4 comes in at Andy Steves' Travel Podcast. You might recognize the last name Steves. This is the son. And he gears this more towards the students and teachers and digital nomads or anybody who wants to learn how to travel cheaply. Andy brings on some interesting guests on his show who share their adventures. A fun one up at number 5 is Betty in the Sky with a Suitcase. Flight attendant Betty shares some really funny travel stories about passengers and fellow crew members often behaving badly from over 50,000 feet in the air. It's kind of fun. A new one on my list this year is Culturally Ours. And I first learned about this when I met the host Karthika Gupta, who I met at one of my travel conferences. And she's got a very compelling podcast that basically, through her interviews of people from around the world, diagnosing different segments of travel and thought about travel, we've ended up realizing how we are pretty much the same no matter where we come from. We may look different, dress different, talk different, and sometimes even act different. But the bottom line is we all pretty much want the same things in the world. And after listening to this podcast, it makes you feel closer to people that are completely different than you from all parts of the world. It's a wonderful podcast. Again, it's called Culturally Ours. At number 7, if you are a kid at heart, is Diz After Dark. This is everything Disney, including movies, but it's geared towards adult. And this is done over a beer, and so it's definitely not for children. The hosts have a great time, and so will you listening to it. Coming in at number 8 is Extra Pack of Peanuts. You can't help but like the affable host Travis, and often his wife Heather. They share travel hacks and destinations on this very engaging show of how to travel on a budget. The show will often feature hodgepodge of destinations, sometimes travel tips. They often list their favorite beer places in Philadelphia or their favorite coffee shops in Chiang Mai. Whatever they're interested in that week, it's just kind of a fun show. Coming in at number 9 is Flight of Fancy. The Aussie host Ben Groundwater talks to you about travel from places that you visit and tips to make sure that you have a safe and a great time wherever you go. New to the list this year at number 10 is Girls Talk Travel. I love seeing all the women that appeared on this year's list. The women are starting to really make some inroads in the podcasting world, so keep that up. On Girls Talk Travel, you learn about the ins and outs of travel, no holds barred. So they are trying to empower women to get out there and travel and get the courage to do so. So it's definitely worth a listen. Coming in at number 11, also new on the list, is the Globetrotter Lounge with Jet Set Lizette. Lizette is an awards points expert, so you learn a lot about that as well as all things travel. Looking for ways to save money while traveling? Check out the long-running Indie Travel Podcast, coming in at number 12. Linda and Craig, often with a guest, explore great places to explore around the globe. And one of my favorite travel podcasts, remember this is in alphabetical order, not in order of the ones that I like, Coming in at Lucky 13 is Jump with Traveling Jackie. Jump used to be called the budget-minded traveler, but Jackie's been doing this for a while, and over time, her travel style has evolved, and so now it's not necessarily budget-minded. It may still have some budget tips in there, but for the most part, it's about travel in general. And so the show itself has evolved, and it's the most engaging show, and one that I listen to every episode that comes out. I like it for her tips, her inspiration, and sometimes the way that some of her topics make me think about myself and about travel in general. It's a very engaging show. New on the list this year at number 14 is On She Goes. I think this is an important show because often when I travel, I don't see many women of color, often just people of color out there traveling. So I love that the show is out there giving women of color not just a voice, but encouragement to get out there and have a ball. And coming in at number 15, another women-powered show called She Explores. This program interviews inspiring women who travel, especially those who explore the outdoors, and they learn more about themselves and life in general. It's one of my favorites. I bet you're wondering when I have time to listen to all these podcasts, but I make it work. Anyhow, coming in at number 16 is another one of my favorites that I always listen to. This one's called the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I love this. Each episode, Amanda picks a topic and then interviews 3 guests about their take and experiences and stories about that topic. Coming in at number 17 is This Week in Travel. This show is co-hosted by 3 of the heavy hitters in the travel content creator sphere. You've got Chris Christensen of The Amateur Traveler, Gary Arndt, a fabulous photographer who does the Everything Everywhere blog, and Jen Leo, formerly of the LA Times and now a freelance travel writer. So it's these 3 and usually a guest. So This Week in Travel is usually the week that they're doing it. It doesn't necessarily come out each week, but whatever week they do produce a show, they banter about whatever was in the news that week, whether somebody did something crazy on a plane, if there's some radical change in the travel industry or something that we need to know. They kind of give us an insider's look at what's going on in the world of travel. And let's move on to number 18, the Travel Tales podcast with Mike Siegel. Mike is a comedian, and each episode he interviews a guest, and it's like you're just eavesdropping in on a really fun conversation where they discuss just whatever where the guest has been, some of their favorite stories, often the things that go wrong, and it's just a lot of fun to listen to. And if you love stories, check out the Travel Stories podcast with host Hayden Lee. Hayden often rambles, but they're always fun rambles, about whatever's engaging and rocking his boat that week. And you feel like you're sharing a beer with the guy as he talks about his lives and thoughts and stories of his life on the road. And just because I say he rambles does not mean this show is a sloppy show. It's actually a very highly well-produced show. And unless I'm mistaken, I believe that's what Hayden does for a living because, as you may or may not know, podcasting is a labor of love. You definitely don't do it for the income. Prefer something less rambly? Check out our number 20, Travel Today with Peter Greenberg. On this podcast, you'll listen to a travel veteran and the travel editor for CBS News interview guests about various travel locations. Peter's guests are the locals that live there, so you get the inside scoop. Another well-produced show is number 21, Travel with Rick Steves, who I'm sure you've heard of. Rick takes his PBS broadcast and brings it to podcasting. Rick's main focus is his beloved Europe. Our number 22 is WDW for Walt Disney World. Learn about everything you need to know before you head to Orlando. At number 23, we're back with the women again, this time with Women Who Travel. You're going to join Condé Nast travelers Lael and Meredith as they discuss issues that affect women who travel. As we come near to the end, number 24, the World Nomads podcast. This show is produced by the World Nomads Travel Insurance Company, of which I have an affiliate. So if you buy travel insurance, please use my link. It helps pay for some of the costs of putting on my podcast. I'd appreciate it. Thanks. And don't think this show is just all boring travel insurance. They talk about all sorts of things regarding travel, including destinations. It's quite an engaging show. If you listen closely, you might recognize the voice of Phil, one of the co-hosts who I featured on my travel insurance episode on my companion podcast, the Adventure Travel Show podcast, episode number 13. I'll put a link in the show notes. You would not believe what we have no clue about travel insurance. It's well worth a listen. And finally, last but not least, one of my favorite hosts is Jason at Zero to Travel. Jason will share ways to bring travel into your life, even if you don't have much money, sometimes even any money. He often provides tips and interviews guests who are digital nomads, i.e. people that are location independent. They can work from anywhere in the world as long as they have the internet. I will put a list of all these in a downloadable PDF with active links to their websites. That will go out in the next newsletter, so be sure to sign up for that by going to activetraveladventures.com/newsletter to make sure that you get that. My goal is to send you a once-a-month email with information that you can use whether in the future or at the present, that you can either print out or just keep on file in your email account so that you can search for it whenever you need it. That way you'll get whatever free downloads and travel planners I offer for that month. So that's my list of the top 25 travel podcasts. But podcasts are a very personal thing. So things I might like, you may not like. Did I miss some of your favorites? Write me at kit@activetraveladventures.com and let me know so I can listen to them and consider them for next year's list. There are over 800,000 podcasts out there. Could you please do me the favor and your friends a favor and share this episode so that your travel-loving buddies will know what are the best travel podcasts they should be listening to in 2020. We all thank you for that. I really appreciate all your support, and I love your emails because they make this a two-way conversation. So let's keep that up. And with that, I wish you a happy new year. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another great adventure. Until then, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.